Oh, okay, we can cut it out. All right, this is our BioBlitz field study research presentation. So our first species was a vertebrate. It's the eastern gray squirrel. Eastern gray squirrels acquire their energy from tree nuts in their local habitat area, and adaptations they have made over time is they have rotating hind feet that allow for squirrels to launch down from trees head first to escape predators. They have an heightened olfactory sense to find food. They have a good memory to find food they've stored for later, and they have strong front teeth to crack through hard tree nuts. And then their importance to humans is that squirrels constantly burying nuts if they don't remember where they are and leave them, they end up planting trees, which is great because we need trees. Additional info, these squirrels are native to East Northern America and are important to our state's tree population. Our next species was an invertebrate, which was an Asian honeybee. They're native to South and Southeastern Asia and Australia, and they live in areas with lots of feeding opportunities that include like flowering plants and some non-flowering plants. And they interact with different plants through pollination. So the female worker and queen bees have 32 chromosomes, which would be 16 pairs of chromosomes. But the drone bees only have one set of 16 chromosomes, so they're haploid, and that's because they're hatched from unfertilized eggs. Their importance to humans is that they pollinate up to $15 billion worth of a wide variety of crops every year, and this contributes to food diversity and lets us have access to like all the fruits and other plants that we need. Some additional info is that a bee can produce about a teaspoon or 5 grams of honey in its whole lifetime. So our next species was the flowering plant, and it was the oak leaf hydrangea. It acquires energy from sunlight, and it uses photosynthesis, like most plants, to convert the energy to food. It's native to the southeastern United States, and they mostly live in hotter climates because they need direct sunlight for most of the day, but not the entire day. And their blooms interact with the soil by changing color depending on the pH. So their flowers will be blue in acidic soil, and they'll be red or pink in more basic soil. Their importance to humans is that their roots can be made into medicine, and this medicine can be used for bladder infections and kidney stones. And some additional info is that hydrangeas are not a true flower, they're just called blooms, and their blooms are made up of sepals or modified leaves. So our next species was our non-flowering plant, and that plant was the eastern hemlock, which is a tree. Eastern hemlocks reproduce by using wind, and there's a female woody cone and then a smaller male cone, and the pollen from the male cone fertilizes the female cone, and it grows on from there and makes seeds. The tree takes around 250 to 300 years to reach maturity and can live for up to 800 years or more on average. Interactions with the environment, the hemlock adligid that is newly introduced is causing a huge uprising in the number of deaths of eastern hemlocks. Importance to humans, hemlocks are very tall and keep a lot of land shaded for human environment and give animals a lot of habitat, which in turn gives us food because the entire food chain. Additional info, the eastern hemlock is a threatened species due to the invasive bugs, and it is the Pennsylvania state tree. So our last species was the fungi, and it's called the red edge brittle stem. It interacts with other mushrooms by possibly sending electrical signals through their root networks. There are still studies about this, and they don't know for sure, but like that's what most of the research shows. And they have adapted by increasing the size of their cones, which is the top part of the mushroom, and that allows for more spore reproduction and leads to more spores being dispersed in the area, so then more mushrooms can start growing there. Their importance to humans is that they are rich in vitamins B, C, and D, fiber, some minerals, and protein. So they're good for us to eat. Only some kinds of mushrooms, though. And this one is actually one of the edible types. All right, so for our research collection, We found that the fungi and invertebrate research collection to be semi-challenging because they are hard to find, and if we did, it was hard to take a clear picture, but the rest of the research was relatively easy to collect.
And then our flowering plants were the easiest to identify because most of the plants that we had pictures of were actually flowering, even if they didn't have flowers. But the non-flowering plants were still pretty easy compared to the fungi. And then advice we would give to scientists trying to create an environmental catalog like this would be to collect research for species in groups, like for example, the vertebrates versus invertebrates, because it's easier to see what information you have when you organize it as you go.
For future research, our species that we chose was the eastern hemlock because of the insects that is taking down the species. So our question was, can insecticides save the eastern hemlock species from the invasive hemlock woolly adwoodgid that is placing the tree species in danger? And then we thought that the insecticides will be able to safely save the eastern hemlock species from the invasive bug that is putting the tree species in danger of going extinct. And then I found a scholarly article on this topic, and our graph to the right, it shows a lot of different collections of data. So there's some on how the bugs are affecting the trees, how the insects are being affected by the insecticide, the trees being affected by the insecticide, and such like that. And this is relevant to our research because our research question, sorry, because that's exactly what our question was on, if the insecticides can help save the trees. And the results of the study did show that the insecticides do show both promising results in protecting the trees and also getting rid of the invasive species. And this experiment we could test by taking a local tree like the one I found for the picture and treating it with an insecticide and seeing if the invasive bug will in fact die and also not hurt the tree.
And these are all of our references. So